is Ricky Jackson. He spent over 39 years in prison for a murder he did not commit.
Mr. Jackson, you're going to be free to go. Life is filled with small victories, and this is a big one. I wish you good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
To be free, I wanted to put all that behind me. And it was important for me to go to this guy and let him know that I understand now. I wanted to forgive him because I wanted him to move on with his life because I was going to move on with mine.
I was always on the brink, because nothing I say or people say or what they show about me will ever convey the pain and the terrible sense of loneliness that I had to suffer through for 39 years.
Imagine walking out of a courtroom at 19 years old, your whole life ahead of you, and then not breathing free air again until you're 57. Imagine missing your 20s, your 30s, your 40s. No first love that lasted. No career. No children. No watching your parents grow old outside of a prison visiting room. Imagine being locked in a cage for a crime you didn't commit, screaming your innocence for nearly 4 decades while the world moves on without you. For Ricky Jackson, this wasn't imagination. This was his life. Because in 1975, a 12-year-old boy told a lie. And that lie stole 39 years from an innocent man. It made Ricky Jackson the longest-serving wrongfully convicted prisoner in United States history. And the worst part? The people who could have stopped it, the ones who knew the truth, stayed silent. They let him rot. Tonight, you're about to hear a story so devastating, so unjust, that it will shake your faith in the system. A story of how a child's coerced testimony became a death sentence. How 3 innocent men were destroyed by a murder they didn't commit. And how it took nearly 4 decades for the truth to finally, painfully, come to light. Stay with me because what happened to Ricky Jackson will break your heart. And what it reveals about justice in America will haunt you long after this video ends. May 19, 1975, Cleveland, Ohio. A man named Harold Franks is walking home from a corner store. It's late afternoon, the sun still hanging in the sky. Harold cuts through a path near a bridge on his way back. He never makes it home. Someone shoots him, execution style, takes his money, leaves him dead on that path. A robbery gone wrong. A senseless murder. The kind that should have been solved quickly because there were witnesses around. But instead of leading to justice, those witnesses led to one of the most catastrophic wrongful convictions in American history. The key witness was a 12-year-old boy named Eddie Vernon. Just a kid. He told police he saw the whole thing. He was on a school bus when it happened, he said, looking out the window. He saw Harold Franks get shot. And he saw who did it. He pointed to 3 young men from the neighborhood. Ricky Jackson, 18 years old. Wiley Bridgman, 20. And Wiley's brother, Kwame Ajamu, who was only 17. Eddie Vernon said these 3 men killed Harold Franks. And the police believed him. Not because there was physical evidence. Not because there were other witnesses who corroborated his story. They believed him because they needed someone to blame. And Eddie Vernon gave them someone. Here's the thing. Eddie Vernon wasn't even on that bus. Other kids who were actually on the bus that day said they didn't see anything. They said Eddie wasn't there. But the police didn't care. They had their witness. They had their suspects. And in 1975 Cleveland, that was enough. Ricky Jackson was 19 when they arrested him. 19. He had his whole life stretching out in front of him. He had plans, dreams. He was working, staying out of trouble, just trying to build something for himself. And then the police came. They told him he was being charged with aggravated murder. That a kid saw him kill Harold Franks. Ricky looked at them like they were insane. Because he didn't kill anyone. He wasn't even there. He had never met Harold Franks. But none of that mattered. Eddie Vernon said he did it. And that was enough to destroy his life. Wiley Bridgman and Kwame Ajamu, the brothers, were arrested too. Same story. Same lack of evidence. Same reliance on the word of a 12-year-old who wasn't even at the scene. All 3 men insisted they were innocent. They had alibis. People who could verify where they were when Harold Franks was shot. But the prosecution didn't care about alibis. They had Eddie Vernon. And they were going to use him. The trial was a sham. The prosecution built their entire case on Eddie's testimony. He took the stand, this frightened kid, and he told the jury what the police had coached him to say. That he saw Ricky Jackson, Wiley Bridgman, and Kwame Ajamu shoot Harold Franks. The defense tried to poke holes in his story. They pointed out the inconsistencies. They brought up the fact that other students on the bus said Eddie wasn't there. But the jury believed the kid. Because why would a 12-year-old lie about something like this? Eddie Vernon lied because he was terrified. Because the police told him what to say. Because they threatened him. Because he was 12 years old and didn't understand the weight of what he was doing. He lied because adults in positions of power told him to. And 3 innocent men paid the price. The verdict came down. Guilty. All 3 of them. Ricky Jackson, Wiley Bridgman, Kwame Ajamu. Guilty of aggravated murder. Descendants? They were sent to death row. Ricky Jackson, at 19 years old, was told he was going to die for a murder he didn't commit. Can you imagine that? Being a teenager sitting in a cell, waiting to be executed for something you didn't do? Knowing you're innocent but the world has decided you're guilty? They sat on death row for years. The appeals process dragged on. And then, by some miracle, their sentences were commuted to life in prison. Not because anyone believed they were innocent. Just because of legal technicalities. So instead of being executed, they got to spend the rest of their lives in prison. What a gift, right? Ricky Jackson spent the next 39 years in prison. 39 years. Let that sink in. From age 19 to 57, he watched other inmates come and go. He watched the world change through tiny glimpses on TV and in letters. He missed everything. The entire prime of his life gone. His mother visited him every week for decades. She never stopped believing he was innocent. She never stopped fighting for him. But year after year, nothing changed. Ricky stayed in prison. Innocent. Forgotten. Wiley Bridgman and Kwame Ajamu were right there with him. Locked up for a crime they didn't commit. Wiley spent 39 years inside too. Kwame got out earlier after 28 years, but only because he accepted a parole deal where he had to admit guilt. He had to say he killed Harold Franks, even though he didn't, just to taste freedom. Imagine that choice. Stay in prison forever as an innocent man, or lie and say you're guilty just to get out. That's not justice. That's torture. For nearly 4 decades, these men screamed their innocence. They filed appeals. They wrote letters. They begged anyone who would listen to look at the case again. And for nearly 4 decades, no one listened. Until 2011. That's when Eddie Vernon, now a grown man in his late 40s, couldn't live with the lie anymore. He had carried this guilt for almost 40 years. He had watched 3 men go to prison for something he knew they didn't do. And it was eating him alive. So he came forward. He found a pastor, an advocate, someone who would listen. And he told the truth. He said he lied. That he wasn't on that bus. That he didn't see the murder. That the police fed him the story. That he was just a scared kid who did what the detectives told him to do. He said Ricky Jackson, Wiley Bridgman, and Kwame Ajamu were innocent. That he destroyed their lives with a lie. Eddie Vernon's recantation should have been enough to free them immediately. But of course it wasn't. The state fought it. Prosecutors argued that recantations aren't reliable, that Eddie might be lying now, not then. Can you believe that? They'd rather believe a coerced 12-year-old from 1975 than a guilt-ridden man finally telling the truth in 2011. They fought to keep innocent men in prison rather than admit the system failed. But the Ohio Innocence Project got involved. Lawyers who actually cared about the truth started digging into the case. And what they found was horrifying. There was no physical evidence tying Ricky, Wiley, or Kwame to the murder. None. No fingerprints. No weapon. No forensics. Nothing. The entire case rested on Eddie Vernon's testimony. That was it. And now Eddie was saying it was all a lie. In 2014, after years of legal battles, a judge finally overturned Ricky Jackson's conviction. On November 21, 2014, Ricky Jackson walked out of prison. He was 57 years old. He had gone in at 19. He had lost 39 years. The longest wrongful incarceration in United States history. Wiley Bridgman was released shortly after. Kwame Ajamu, who had already been paroled, was officially exonerated. After nearly 4 decades, The state of Ohio finally admitted what these men had been saying all along. They were innocent. But here's the thing about exoneration. It doesn't give you back what you lost. Ricky Jackson walked out of prison into a world he didn't recognize. Technology had exploded. The internet, cell phones, social media, everything was different. His parents were gone. His mother, who had visited him faithfully for decades, had died before she could see him freed. He had no career, no savings, no family of his own. He was 57 years old and had to start over from scratch. How do you do that? How do you rebuild a life after 39 years are stolen from you? Ricky tried. He really did. He got a settlement from the state of Ohio. About $1 million for each year he spent in prison. Sounds like a lot, right? Except no amount of money can buy back 39 years. No amount of money can give him his 20s, his 30s, his 40s. No amount of money can bring back his mother or let him have children or give him a career or a normal life. The money was an insult disguised as compensation. And the people responsible? The detectives who coerced Eddie Vernon? The prosecutors who built a case on a child's lie? They faced no consequences. None. No one was held accountable for destroying 3 lives. No one apologized. The system just shrugged and moved on. Eddie Vernon, the boy who lied, has said he lives with crushing guilt. That he's sorry. That he wishes he could take it back. And while his recantation eventually freed these men, it doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't give Ricky back 39 years. Eddie was a kid. He was manipulated. But the adults, the police, the prosecutors, they knew better. And they did it anyway. Ricky Jackson's story is one of the most heartbreaking miscarriages of justice in American history. Not just because of how long he was imprisoned, but because of how easily it could have been prevented. If the police had done actual detective work instead of relying on a scared kid. If the prosecutors had cared about the truth instead of just getting a conviction. If anyone along the way had stopped and said, "Wait, where's the evidence?" Ricky Jackson would never have spent a single day in prison. But they didn't. And he did. 39 years. The best years of his life. Gone. Stolen by a lie. By a system that was more interested in closing a case than finding the truth. Wiley Bridgman and Kwame Ajamu suffered the same fate. 3 men. 3 destroyed lives. All because of a 12-year-old's coerced testimony and a justice system that didn't care enough to question it. Ricky Jackson is free now. But he's not whole. How could he be? He's living in a world he doesn't fully understand, grieving a life he never got to live. He's doing his best. He's advocating for criminal justice reform. He's trying to make sure what happened to him doesn't happen to anyone else. But every day he carries the weight of those 39 stolen years. This is the story of Ricky Jackson. The man who lost 39 years for a murder he didn't commit. The longest-serving wrongfully convicted prisoner in United States history. A man who should have had a full, beautiful life, but instead spent 4 decades in a cage, screaming into the void that he was innocent. And when they finally let him out, when they finally admitted they were wrong, it was almost 40 years too late. Remember his name. Ricky Jackson. An innocent man who lost nearly 4 decades to a broken system that refused to admit its mistakes. A man who deserved so much more than what this world gave him. That's his story. And it should make you angry. Because if it could happen to him, it could happen to anyone.